You had another post I thought was interesting. It said removing friction impacts customer experience and loyalty. And I think customer experience, customer loyalty, building and creating fans, creating demand is ultimately at the end of the day what a lot of event marketers are trying to do with either their
Mhm.
customer set or their audience at events that they are putting on. Talk us through what you meant by that.
That refers in part to what I said about make it simple mantra. We often think about how to increase motivation of people if we want them to do something, right? Well, the first step should be to get into their shoes and audit every step of the process. So for example, if again, like your attendees have to go through a complex or confusing registration process, this is friction, right? This is something that prevents them from completing a step to take the action that you want them to take. And they may just basically abandon it. They become frustrated, they become discouraged. And
What's an example of that at an event? What's an example of like steps or something that you're trying to get an attendee audience member to do and essentially not wanting to make it complicated?
well, registration is one example, right?
Mhm.
Another story, it was a true story actually. A colleague shared it publicly a few years ago. She couldn't complete a hosted buyer application at IBTM because they only accepted credit cards for the €5 fee. And she only had a debit card for her business. So she ended up not registering for the event. And
Wow.
so it's basically an example of how you need to get into attendees' shoes and audit the process. So what kind of friction can be that prevents people from doing what you want them to do? Another example can be long lines, or waiting, because again, at check-in, or if you are somewhere at an event and you need to stand in a line, and waiting kills all the anticipation, kills all the emotions that people may have, positive emotions that people may have.
Yeah.
It leads to attendee frustration and basically reduce the overall satisfaction of about the event. So that's the friction that can be solved by, again, auditing this process and suggesting some solutions, like you can create, like Disney does that. They have absolutely huge lines, right, for the rides. So they created some entertainment along the line. So people have something to do while they wait. And so the waiting time is not perceived as long as it is,
Yeah.
in fact. And that sort of removes part of the stress, removes part of the friction from the experience.
Victoria, let's kind of wrap up here. One question I want to ask you is, do you have like two or three, I don't want to say general, but just if I said, hey, give two or three pieces of advice to event marketers that are running, hosting, throwing summits, conferences, roundtables, user conferences, right? What are two to three pieces of advice that you would give them if you were capped at three?
That's a good one. Well, first of all, I would say get someone on board who can help you with those science-based solutions. Because, I wrote that a few years ago, I wrote about getting event neuroscientists. And at the time, I even didn't have this term of event psychology to share because I didn't think it that way. It just, was the start of my journey with event psychology. But throughout the years, this blog remains one of my most popular blogs, and I can see that teams start hiring behavioral researchers. They start getting the experts on their team for the event specifically. And the same is true for marketers.
Mhm.
You've got a lot on your plate. So one of the things that you don't want to do is to add this particular part and work on it, because it requires a lot of time. So you need someone with the knowledge, with experience, and with expertise in this specific topic. And that will actually make your job much more simple. Because again, like I said, science-based solutions are often low key. They don't require a lot of resources, but they do require knowledge and intentionality about it. So that's one of the things. Then I would say that event marketers work a lot with language as a tool. So you need to understand that language is powerful. When you create a copy for your website, for your event invites, whatever that is, you need to keep in mind that language is powerful. Wording and specific, phrases that you can use can lead to specific outcomes. So watch that space and be mindful about language. These are two things that I would say I would advise.
Nice. Those are good.